Hey everybody, good morning and happy Friday. Finally, it's Friday. Thank goodness, right? It's been a long week with all this cold and other fun, inclement weather and constant rain, at least all yesterday. Crazy. But anyways, it's Friday, so hey, finally. I'm Steve Brogan, Town Media Director, and this is Tyngsborough TV's Friday Wrap-Up. You can catch this broadcast on the multitude of places that we put it out on. So Facebook, the multiple pages we share it on YouTube, again, it's finally working again, hooray. So you can watch it there. You can also watch it at Comcast 8, Verizon 29 here in Tyngsborough, and at tyngsboroughma.gov on our live and video on demand and streaming service. So what are we talking about today? Well, I don't have a guest. It's just me, so we're gonna chat about a few things going on in town. I got a couple little tidbits for you. One of the bigger things I wanted to chat about is the if you go on the FEMA website, they have a really interesting document on preparedness, and it's something that probably a good idea for everybody at least to think about because of the number of things that have happened even in our local region in the last year, but also on a national level, and then everything, natural disasters, and all the other kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of crazy things that happen, so it's good to be prepared. So something we can talk about. Also, Patriots in the Super Bowl, hooray! Again, it's crazy. I feel like we had just the worst football team and baseball team for the most part. They never did well anyway. It's not the worst, but they never did well. Now they're just gangbusters. I mean, it's ridiculous. I feel like very privileged to grow up or live in a time when we have such amazing local sports teams. It's fantastic to see all that. And also we can talk about some other fun stuff, funny stories, dog licensing. That's still going on, so don't forget to get your dog's license because you'll get an extra fine added to your or an extra fee added to your dog licensing if you do it after March 1st. So that's a good thing to know. You want to save a few bucks, you can do that. Yeah, government's still shut down, so whatever that means. That doesn't really mean too much for us, at least luckily on a local level, unless you work for the government. Sorry about that. And the weather. We talk about that kind of stuff too. So feel free to chime in if you're watching on Facebook or if you're watching on YouTube. You can chime in, ask questions, and chat. Get some just fun stuff to talk about. So all that said, I got the music off, so that's good. Hooray! Coming up this week, I figured I'd start with the weather because it's going to be kind of lousy a couple days anyways. Well, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday apparently. I don't know exactly what the totals are. When I look at the stuff on National Weather Service, it doesn't give you like a ton of information generally because the storm is so far out. They don't know what the totals are either. So at that point, but something you want to at least know about. So here, let me pop up the computer screen. There you go. We'll start it right there. Going to be beautiful today. Chilly, cold tonight. It's weird. It's gone from like 0 and -1 degree up to almost 60 yesterday, and then back down to the 30s. And make sure you're wrapping up and being careful not to get sick, because big swings like that tend to have they have a tendency sometimes to get us sick, or allow us to get sick. Yeah, Saturday's going to be nice, just cold. Sunday looks like a chance of showers or snow possibly, high 38, but otherwise not too bad. Monday, same thing, clear and cold. And then Monday night and Tuesday, they're talking about this little storm. Again, I have no idea what totals are. I don't even think National Weather Service has posted anything. Yeah, they've got no total. Oh, no, 3 to 6. They do. No, that's the miles per hour. No, they have no total, so who knows? I'm going to guess probably not much, but we'll know as it gets closer, so it shouldn't affect too much, hopefully. We'll see. But it is on Monday and Tuesday this time, so if it is a big snowstorm, at least we'll get to get a day out of work, right? That would be nice. But I digress. Anyways. All right. So one of the bigger things I wanted to mention, actually, let's do this first. Let me get through the local news. So don't forget that there's a special town meeting coming up. If you have not heard of this already, there is that special town meeting. It is next week, next Tuesday, January 29th at 7 o'clock at Old Town Hall. So definitely go by there if you would like to know what's going on. Like I said, we'll be broadcasting it on the usual places, Comcast and Verizon and Facebook. So you can watch it there. It's a one-issue meeting, so it shouldn't be super long. But they definitely would like to. I mean, they'd love to have you come out and at least voice your voice on this if you need to, or just vote. Obviously, just come out and vote. It's basically just to get some additional funding for the First Parish Meeting House to make sure that the whole project can be done because the bids came back really high. So building, unfortunately, is costing quite a bit because of the economy and the sort of the boom in building. So it's been causing prices to go up. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, so come out next Tuesday. It's at Old Town Hall again. And yeah, just a one-issue thing. So like I say, if you want to just watch it, or if you want to come down, you can do that too. Pretty cool stuff. Also, I think I mentioned this already, the dog license thing. There you go. So get your dog licenses done before March 1st, and you won't have to pay the additional, was that $25 fee on top of the regular fee. It's only $7 for a neutered and spayed animal and $11 for a non-neutered and spayed animal. And the main reason for this is to make sure that everybody's getting their rabies vaccines for their pets, because that's obviously not good. If you don't have your rabies vaccine for your dog and they suddenly contract it from something, the bad things can happen, obviously, so can be spread. So you want to make sure you have your rabies vaccine. It's always a good thing to do. Dog licenses. It's time to do it. You got till March 1st if you don't want to have to pay the additional fee, and otherwise after that you have to pay the additional fee. So save yourself $25 and get it done early. And you don't have to do cats. So if anybody asks, and it just has to be dogs. As long as it has 4 legs and barks, then it's probably a dog, and you should register those. Whoops, there we go. Come on, computer. Where was I? Oh, hang on a second. Sorry. No, I talked about that already. Okay. Oh, no, there it is. It's on the other page. Fire department. There we go. They did open up open burning again. So if you have brush and all that other fun stuff to burn, you can do that again. However, there should be the caveat on this. If it's a crazy windy day or something like that, use your common sense and don't burn on those days. Or if you're ever in question, call the fire department. Ask them, is it safe to burn today? Even though it's open burning and is open, it might not be the safest. Like I said, if it's a crazy windy day or something like that, we've had some pretty high winds come through. So just something to keep in mind. Call the fire department if there is any questions, and that way you can make sure and not burn the woods down or whatever else, or your house or your neighbor's house. That would be terrible. Don't do that. So just use common sense. Call the fire department if you have any questions on that. And then we'll talk about the Patriots a little bit. They're going to Super Bowl again. It's crazy. I can't even understand this. This is seriously nuts. These guys are Tom Brady. There's no question Tom Brady's the GOAT. I mean, it is what it is. Anybody who denies it is a hater, quite honestly. Just because I like the Patriots and whatever, but it is what it is. They're the best. I mean, they really are. The best coaching, the best quarterback, the best, everything. I mean, these guys are just rocking. So pretty cool stuff. Nice to see those guys go to the Super Bowl again. I'd love to see the Sox get to the World Series again. That would be really cool. Love to see the Celtics and the Bruins get one the same year. Maybe that would be really neat, right? If we could get all of our teams to get one in the same year. It's possible. We have good enough sports teams that it's possible. There's definitely a chance that could happen. That would be pretty cool. So lots of fun stuff there. What are you guys doing for the Super Bowl? Let me know in the comment section what you guys are planning for the Super Bowl. What are you going to eat? Where are you going to be? You going to hang out? What's your favorite beverage of choice? Are you a Bud Light, or are you a craft beer person, or do you drink wine, or do you drink soda or water, or whatever the case may be? Let me know in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys what your favorite stuff to do for the Super Bowl is. I know I'll usually get some good craft beers from one of the local breweries. Always one of my favorites. To go for the local breweries around here, because it's the freshest and, at least in my opinion, the best, because it's local, and then we usually make nachos and wings and the usual stuff. We don't order out. We don't usually bother with that because we can make all that stuff at home, and it's better, I think. Just as good or better, my opinion anyways. But yeah, we do all kinds of fun stuff too. We usually throw it on the TV, obviously throw it on the TV. However, one of my favorite things to do is I'm not a huge fan of the announcers at the, no offense to the guys at Fox or whoever's broadcasting at this time, or I think CBS, I think. Never really was a fan of those guys for announcers, and they tend to pick some people that are just people I'm not really fans of. But you can listen to it on the radio. It used to be on BCN, WBCN. No, they're gone now, obviously. But you can listen to them on the radio, and I like to listen there because I like the announcers better on the radio. They tend to be, I don't know, it's more interesting. Plus, you don't have. The only kicker is you don't have the delay or the lag sometimes that you'll get with TV. So there's like a 3 to 5 second delay sometimes. Between going through all the processing and all the stuff that they do on the broadcast end. So it's kind of funny because you'll hear like a big play and then you see it on the television like a couple seconds later. So that throws you a little bit, but it's all good. It's pretty cool. So that's how I like to do it anyways. It's always fun. So let's get to the main topic of what I wanted to discuss today. And again, any questions or any feedback or whatever, feel free to throw that on the Facebook comment section or YouTube as well. So let me pop that open real quick in case you guys are on there. There's a couple people watching, looks like. I did say we're back on YouTube, so that's cool. It's working again, thankfully. That's been a trial, I'll tell you. Getting YouTube and just doing multiple different streaming services, hitting a bunch of different streaming services can be difficult. There's actually quite a few technical challenges trying to get it to work. It seems simple. It's like plug in this to A to this wire to B, and it should work for the most part. But it's not always that easy with some settings on the back end and trying to make things look and sound correct because of delays and latency and whatnot. So it can be fun. But working on another project too, actually, where all of our channels will be streamed. Or maybe just one. I haven't quite figured this out. Again, lots of nuts and bolts that go into making some of these things work. But streaming our channels to YouTube constantly, right? So you'd be able to watch it on YouTube as a constant stream. The broadcast unit that we use actually allows for that. So that would be really cool to make that work. But also sending those same channels onto some of the different streaming apps. So Roku is one of them. Chromecast, I've read, is another one that I can get onto. But I'm going to start with Roku, get that kind of tested, work out the kinks and stuff. There's some other, at least one other access center, that I know of that is currently doing it, and it seems to be working out pretty well. So we're going to try that. And as that works, or as that gets going, then I'll try some of the other services as well, because it just gives us another way to reach the community. Because ultimately, that's what's important. Not everybody's on Facebook, not everybody's watching TV. A lot of times on TV now, it's a little more difficult to see us because we're in the low numbers where all of your HD channels and most likely the stuff that you watch is up in the 700s and 800s channel numbers. So you're not usually getting down to like 8, 29, 30, you know what I mean? Just the way it falls on the channel lineup, you don't usually get down there. And you can't click through as fast. You go through the TV guide, at least I did when I had cable. We'd go through the TV guide, so you weren't actually going through the channels, so you wouldn't catch something that happened to be on another channel, unless you were, I guess, old school channel surfing, you know what I mean? Like click one, and then you gotta wait for it to load, and click two, and then wait for it to load. It doesn't work like that anymore, unfortunately. You can't like rapid fire it like you used to be able to. But yeah, so we're trying to get just trying to get this out on a bunch of different places. Obviously we've got it on the social stuff. There are other places on social, like we could put it like Twitter, and a couple other streaming services. But I feel like it starts to get a little bit redundant. Facebook and YouTube are the two big ones, I think, as far as video streaming. Twitter's obviously big for what it is, but as far as video streaming, those two I think are the biggest. And then, like I said, the Roku and whatever else we can get it onto, just so we can reach everybody. That wants to watch this stuff. And also, I had mentioned in the past once, and I know I told you to talk about this at some point, the government shutdown has paused all of the stuff that was happening at the FCC that I sort of touched on a couple of weeks ago, and what that was basically, in a nutshell, was a change at the FCC and how they would allow all your cable providers to look at the funding that they give to PEG Access, which basically directly supports what I do here, these programs and others, and all your government broadcasting and all that stuff, that they could change the way they looked at that, and they could basically change the formula and could allow them to either cut a substantial portion of, or all of, depending, a small portion up to all of the funding that's given to PEG Access. So there's some interesting things coming down the pike there. But again, the government shutdown has stopped all that. I know a friend of mine who actually works for the government, who's most likely one of the on furlough. Hi, Phil. I doubt he wants to talk about it too much because it's probably pretty aggravating, and I'm sure they're hoping that they can get to work soon. But yeah, so that's it. The government shutdown has basically paused all that stuff because it was the FCC, and they're all on furlough at this point, sitting, doing whatever it is they're doing at this point. Though I'm sure some of them are working. There's got to be some people that are working, some essential staff, just to keep things from, burning down or the pipes blowing up or something like that. You got to keep the buildings going. So that basically paused the FCC stuff, and I've been researching it as much as I can. There's a ton of info out there, a ton of stuff being said on both sides. From the cable provider stuff, the things that they've said where they're obviously supporting it, and then from the PEG Access side. And unfortunately, the hard part is finding the middle ground and being able to boil down what exactly is going to happen. So, nice, Phil. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, what exactly is going to be, what exactly is going to come out of this stuff? How much funding, if any, we're going to lose, and what it'll look like and stuff. So we really just don't know, unfortunately. It's all up in the air. So once that finally comes out and I have maybe some better information, I'll talk about it more, but that's more or less what's going on. The FCC is basically just looking at a rule change. They haven't been too friendly to the internet or, now PEG Access recently with the neutrality changes. that. And yeah, and even though we have state law that dictates how this is supposed to work, it trumps it, I guess, from what I could, no pun intended, from what I could read, there really isn't, even though we have state law regarding it, it would be void, more or less. I don't know. I've reached out to our attorneys and stuff as well to kind of get some determinations on some of these things as well, because I'm not a lawyer, clearly. And I don't pretend to be one at all. I never would. But yeah, so it's interesting stuff. We'll see what happens with the FCC things. Meanwhile, we're moving ahead just as we usually would. I'm doing a class today, actually, with a Girl Scout troop. Was it 68085 or 65? I forget the number. I have to look for you. But yeah, I'm doing a class with a Girl Scout troop later today. So, just teaching media stuff. 68085, yeah, that's the one. Still continuing to teach media stuff, trying to work with some of the high school kids, been supporting some of the theater stuff going on with some new equipment and some assistance to help their productions, make them a little easier on the back end, and also, just so they have some better equipment available to them. So that's always good. And we're still going forward, of course, with our future PEG Access Center. We're still in the design phase, working with our architect to complete that part of the process, and then very soon, I hope, we're going to be going out to bid to get a contractor. Hopefully those bids don't come back insanely high, but we'll see, I guess. I have no idea how that's going to work out, but it's interesting having to do a public bid, and yeah. Yeah, bidding is interesting. When you work in government, I worked in a nonprofit before coming here, so it was a little bit different. We had somewhat more leeway in terms of that stuff, but yeah, it just is what it is, basically. It's how government works. It's slow. No, I'm kidding. No, but it could make things more expensive because you have to pay prevailing wages and things like that when it comes to construction projects, because it's a public works type of project. So it can make things a little more expensive, quite a bit more expensive, actually. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. The plans, I would actually love to share these with you guys at some point. The plans have evolved just slightly, just a little bit, but very much the same as what I had presented, was it a year ago plus now, I think, the last time we presented it. But it's going to be a really beautiful facility. We're going to have a radio room, a studio B for host-operated stuff, and then a main studio A. Again, provided the whole funding thing works out, depending on what the bids come back at. We may have 2 or 3 studios, full size, and then a couple of small satellites. But yeah, it's going to be a really nice studio. We're going to try to incorporate, obviously, all of this stuff that we have here, the hitting the different places, YouTube, Facebook, obviously the town channels. We're going to be expanding the town channels, which is really cool. We've gotten to the point where we definitely need all of our channels. So let me explain this, I guess. Let me back up for a second. Each town is given 3 channels: a public, an education, and a government channel. That government channel is what broadcasts all of your meetings and stuff like that. That's how we keep it here anyways. It's generally what it's for. The education channel is what would come from your schools. So anything that they produce, sporting events, all kinds of stuff, whatever we can find that's school related, as well as some other things. We'll throw some other stuff on there too, pepper it in every now and again. And then the public channel is the general community channel, where anything that anybody wants to produce, that's where it ends up. That's where it goes, would be on the public channel. So any other, whatever the case may be, town events, things that, if somebody wants to film their church services or anything, the cartoon block that we play on Saturday and Sunday mornings, I think Saturday mornings now, and all that other fun stuff. So yeah, so that would end up on the public. So right now what we're doing here in Tyngsborough is we're only operating on the government channel and half of the PEG channel. And the reason being is because in order to have Comcast and Verizon add the additional equipment, there's a fee to that, to have them do that, because there's some equipment required to make that all work. And then with us going to be moving in a year, hopefully, to the new space, it would cost more money then to get that stuff moved over to there by Comcast and Verizon, so they can reset it up. So basically, I've been holding on doing those things. So, but we're definitely reaching that need. The school department's been doing a ton of new stuff. So hats off to Anne-Marie Roy and her class over there. They're doing bunches of really cool productions. They do news and stuff. And they've also been doing some other cool things over there as well. So they're going to have their own channel. The school committee meetings, they will be playing those there, and they're definitely looking for some live time. So that they can broadcast their meetings live, and a number of other things. There's all kinds of stuff. The theater productions. There's a ton of stuff that'll be out there and available. So lots of need for sure, and we'll be activating that stuff hopefully soon. So that's kind of a little bit how PEG Access works. All that equipment literally sits right behind me. What goes out to people on the main channels, and then the rest of it's through the internet, which is really cool. Oh, I didn't. You know what, Phil? I didn't say where the new space is going to be. 120 Westford Road. So if you're driving north on Route 3, exit 34, it's literally that building right next to the exit. Right as you're driving down the highway, it's right before the exit, actually, on the left side, and you'll see the building. Actually, if you're coming south, it's easier to see it, but because it's on the opposite side if you're going north. The opposite side of the highway, but it's that little building. It used to be a Legion building. Now, right now, it's currently the Tyngsborough Rec Department, but they'll be moving to the First Parish Meeting House, the basement of that. So then we're going to take that building and renovate it and do all kinds of fun stuff. So it's going to be really nice. I mean, excellent space. And regardless of what happens as far as funding, I've already been looking at options in terms of how to pare it down and make it still fit inside a budget by making some changes and things. So we may end up cutting off the big studio and just doing a small studio thing where we have a few little studios. You know, the way public access works, or the way TV media and all this stuff works now, you don't need massive studios necessarily. It's nice to have it, obviously, to do some bigger productions and things like that. I have a bunch of ideas that would totally get shot because I wouldn't be able to do them because I wouldn't have a bigger studio to do them in. But that said, you can do lots of stuff in small spaces. I mean, I'm literally sitting in like a 8x8 square here with the stuff that I'm using just to make this all happen, and all the other interviews and stuff, they all happen in the same spot. So unless we're out in the field, so there's ways to make things work, and we'll definitely still continue to make stuff work, and we just have to work on the budget and see what it comes back at. So lots of cool stuff there, though. I have my fingers crossed, and yeah, we'll go from there. So it should be interesting. What else did I want to talk to you guys about? Oh, I didn't ask this, but what are your predictions for the Patriots game? I'm thinking 28-14. I don't think it'll be a blowout. I hope not anyways. I like when it's a closer game. The comebacks, I can't do another one of the comebacks. I'm literally going to have a heart attack, I think, if they do that again. I just can't do it. Take it. You know, if we could talk to Brady and tell him to not do that, please, I would really appreciate it, because that was brutal the last time. Oh my God. I can't even believe that still, that happened. But yeah, I'm thinking 28-14. What are your predictions? What do you think the Patriots score is going to be? Win, loss? Obviously, I'll say win, I'm sure. But what do you think the final score is going to be? Like I say, I'm with a 28-14 is my guess. Yeah, okay. Let's move on. Let's talk about what the other big topic I had for you. So if you are preparedness minded, let's say, you've obviously all watched the news, I'm assuming. You've seen what's happened even in our community and just outside of in the last 6 months or a year. So power outages, for one. Tyngsborough seems to be plagued with power outages for whatever reason that goes out when the wind looks the wrong way, much less blows. It's interesting. It's not just Tyngsborough, though. I kid. It's all over the place. So that's one thing. Major winter events, winter snowstorms. We just had a little bit of a snowstorm. Could have been a huge snowstorm. It turned out to be a whisper, really, for the most part, other than the cold. But, snowstorms. And then look what happened in the Lawrence, North Andover area. And with the gas explosion, people were displaced for weeks out of their houses, in some cases, weeks and months. So lots of things can happen. So FEMA suggests that you have some stuff repaired. And we're not saying I'm not saying go to an extreme and have like a year's worth of food in your basement and whatever, all that kind of stuff. If you want to do that, go for it, but knock yourself out. But there are some things you can do to prepare for your family and for yourself so that should something like this happen, knock on wood, none of these things ever happen, thankfully. You just never know. I mean, who would have thought that the gas lines would have exploded in Lawrence and over North Andover? I mean, that was like completely out of the blue. So some things to think about. So FEMA has this document that they put out. It's a long document. There's a lot to it, and there are some condensed versions you can get on the internet. Just Google, FEMA preparedness checklist, and you can get a lot of it. But if you go to their website, here we go, bring that up. If you go to their website, I actually Googled FEMA preparedness checklist and went to their website and went to the which one did I go to? Hang on a second. They have a bunch of stuff here. So I went to this one here, which is the here we go. Yeah, it's the Are You Ready document. Which one is it on this list? Sorry. Yeah, it's down here on this list. It's one of these. I think it's this one, actually. I think it was the plans one. Pretty sure it was that one. It might have been on another page from there. No, it wasn't that one either. No, that's just general plans. So they have these for businesses and for a number of other people as well. But anyways, the document's on here. Where's the one I just looked at? How did I get that? Hang on. Love when stuff like this happens. No, that's for business. Continuity self-assessment checklist. Maybe it was this one. It was one of these. Ah, oh, come on, computer. There we go. No, wasn't that one either. It was on ready.gov. Yeah, there's a bunch of links here, so that's it took me a minute to actually find the thing that I wanted. I apologize. I should have this a little more planned out for you. So you can also go to ready.gov. This one looks like it's a little more cut and dry as far as the basics. They go over some of the major stuff. So the this document though that FEMA puts out called "Are You Ready?" And you could probably just Google this and get the PDF. It's a pretty long PDF. It's a couple hundred pages, 204 pages. As with anything with the government, it's rather all-encompassing and overbuilt. I'm just kidding. So some things to think about. So actually, here I was just kind of scanning through this because it's a long document. I was just kind of scanning through it, and they talk about utility shutoffs and safety. So again, the gas thing. Do you know if you have natural gas or propane? Would you know how to shut that off? Would you have the tool to shut it off for one? Would you know where and how to shut that off? It's going to be basically just a valve, but how would you actually turn that off? Something to think about and investigate. Water lines in your house, also something that you may want to know how to shut it off if there was ever an issue with the water system. That's a good one to shut off or to check, to at least know and understand how to shut that off. If you're on a well, different story. But maybe how to shut that off, where the breaker is for the pump, where the line comes in, how to turn the valve so you could shut that off if there was an issue, to close off your house or whatever the case may be. So that's an interesting one. But gas is a big one. Propane is another one. Where's your shut off for your propane? Do you know? Have you ever looked at your propane tank other than just looking at the gauge or watching the guy come to fill it? Would you know how to shut that off? So that's another big one to being safe. If there was ever a leak in the house, you could go outside, turn it off, and at least make it so that there was no more continuing to spew in. So there's tons of YouTube videos and stuff out there that you can go check out, and they'll go in detail on how to do some of this stuff. So that was kind of an interesting one, definitely poignant to what's happened in recent history here. Let me see. Let me go back to the beginning of this, and I'll kind of go through again, this is really all-encompassing. They list out like all of the different types of disasters that could happen, from terrorism to tech hazards to just natural disasters. Things around here. Flooding is obviously something that could happen around here. Tornadoes have happened in Massachusetts. We had some, I think it was a year ago or two. Forget exactly. There was a couple that went through here and did some damage. Hurricanes. We haven't had any lately, but there's another one for sure to pay attention to. We had a few years ago that was kind of not too big a deal, but thunderstorms and lightning, that happens everywhere, clearly. Generally, that's not something that's going to displace you. A hurricane might. A tornado obviously could. Flooding definitely could displace you. Winter storms and extreme cold. So that's a biggie right there, is making sure that you're prepared for that stuff. Living in New England, I feel like we all pretty much know how to do that at this point, unless you're a blow-in from the south or something. But being prepared for winter storms, knowing how to drive in winter storms, not having to run to the supermarket the day before a winter storm shows up to buy all the milk, bread, and eggs that's available so you can make French toast for the next 4 days, or however long you're going to be in the house. So that's a good one. But knowing how to deal with it, having some salt on hand, having a shovel on hand, having some emergency contact numbers if you have seniors or potential medical disabilities that you might need to get to the hospital in the middle of a snowstorm. Talking to the chief last week, both chiefs last week, I was actually rather comforted to know that they have an excellent plan in place to make sure that even in a snowstorm, the ambulance could get through and get you to where you got to go. So that's something to think about. Extreme heat. That happens here, sure. Yeah, if we have a bunch of heat and then the power goes out and now you don't have any air conditioning, that can wipe people out like crazy if they don't have ways to keep cool. So, having ways to keep cool, auxiliary ways to keep cool, and just keeping an eye on folks who might be the most affected by that stuff, seniors specifically, is a big one in that kind of heat. Earthquakes, we don't, thankfully, have that very often. We don't have that very often here, luckily. I'm happy about that one. Earthquakes are not one of those ones that I'm interested in at all. Volcanoes, I think we're good, at least in this region anyways. I won't count it out completely, but, I doubt highly that would happen around here. Landslides and debris, tsunamis, thankfully I think we're okay here. Fires and wildfires, of course. Living in a rural area, you're surrounded by tons of woods, and wouldn't take much, quite honestly, to have that turn into a decent-sized fire. Luckily, we don't have the issues that California has with the Santa Ana winds. and the just tinderbox of location that is for whatever reason. It's just always so dry there. So luckily we're okay. It goes into terrorism stuff. I mean, I don't want to scare people and whatnot, but there's a bunch of different things that they talk about, potentials, explosions, bio threats, chemical threats, nuclear blasts, radiological dispersion. So there's just a bunch of different things. A lot of it's you pray that this stuff never ever happens, for sure, but you never know. I mean, crazier things have happened for sure in some cases. So this document goes through all the different nuts and bolts of the basics of who would do what and how and so on. There we go, basic preparedness. So first one on there is get informed about the hazards and emergencies that may affect your family. So what could affect our area? So we just kind of went through that list a little bit. Develop an emergency plan. What would you do? Where would you go? Who would you see? What would you take with you? Those kind of things. What are your steps if it was a gas explosion or something like that? What would you do first? Would you shut off your gas supply, shut off your water, so on and so forth? What are the things that you would take care of in a different instance rather? Collect and assemble disaster supplies kits. So, and this is where it comes down to what you're prepping for. What do you envision most likely happening? What would you have to do? Would you have to stay in the house? Would you have to leave? Those are more or less your two options. So in those cases, what would you want to have on hand in order to be ready for something like that? A go bag or something, one for each one of your family members with some supplies in it, or just have some supplies at your house if you don't think you'd ever have the chance of being displaced from your home. Having some of those things ready. So that's a good one. And then learn where to seek shelter from all types of hazards. So there you go. That's a good one. Where would you go? If you did have to leave, where are you going to be running to? The schools, they open those up generally as areas for, we'll call them refugees, I guess, for places for people to go when they're displaced from stuff. They usually start at the schools, senior centers oftentimes as well. We have a number of schools, obviously. We have an elementary, a middle, and a high school. Most likely they'd start at the elementary school, but then maybe the high school, I don't know. The Council on Aging, obviously, would be another location to open up if something like that was to happen. And then let's see. So we got those one. Identify the community warning systems and evacuation routes. That's another one. You probably have all, or a lot of you, I'm sure, have seen the pictures from when hurricanes hit Florida or just down south and they evacuate folks, and you see this just absolutely ridiculous line of cars. It looks like rush hour traffic in Los Angeles on the freeways there. It's just insane. All of these cars going in the same direction, and everybody, for whatever reason, jumps on the highway. Of course, that's the quickest route generally to get out of a place or to a place, but is that the best way? So maybe have some other alternate emergency routes. First, obviously, you have to identify where you're going to go. Relative's house, one of these other locations I just mentioned, government buildings, things like that. But then how would you get there? So there's a good one. Learn your routes. And then also where are you going to get this information from? So I think that's kind of what this is getting. Identify the community warning systems. So where are you going to get the information from? So clearly here, Tyngsborough Police is very vocal on Twitter as well as the fire department and on their Facebook pages. So I'm imagining that the chief would post something immediately. One of the chiefs, it would be Wes Russell, who is our emergency management chief, runs emergency management for the town. He would put something out on the website, which would then hit the different social pages, social sites, and so you could get that information there. So making sure that you're on the reverse 911. So what do we call it here? Emergency, the 911 system. But anyways, being on that system as well as following them on Twitter and Facebook, and having their phone number on hand, the business line. Everybody can call 911. We all know that one, but not occupying those numbers for the 911 number for just a what's going on type of question. So having their business line for both the fire department and for the police department would definitely be something I would suggest. It's always good. Those are always good numbers to have. You should obviously have 911. Well, you don't have to have 911 in your phone, but because it's easy enough to dial. But having the business line in your business lines in your phone, so that you could call them in an emergency. Smart 911. That's what it's called. So being on our Smart 911 system, you can get there from the Tyngsborough Police website, right on the front page under Connect with Us. We also have it on the town government page. You can also go there to get it as well. So doing that. And then, let's see, Also, they say include in your plans required information from community and school plans, so that's a good one. And then learn what to do for specific hazards and practice and maintain your plan. So here's one thing where I think a lot of people don't do is they don't practice their plans. I'm obviously guilty of it too. I shouldn't say that. I'm super good at this either. But practicing your plan, so at least kind of getting together with your family, maybe having the, like if there's a fire, having a meeting location outside the house somewhere. Where would you all meet up? So on and so forth. That kind of, under that kind of mantra for that. All right, so moving on. So getting informed, they talk about just some of the different ways to be informed and all the different hazards. Boy, there's a lot of them. I mean, there really is quite a few of them. Having a good paper map is obviously handy, because if the cell service was to go down, say, having a paper map of your area, so at least if you needed to get someplace, maybe your plans got changed, I would imagine that would be a good idea. So that you don't have to rely on GPS in your cell phone. Batteries can die, GPS can go out, all that stuff can get goofed up. School emergency plan, so what would you do if your kids were in school, if something happens during the workday? Your kids are in school, you're at work, and what do you do? How do you communicate with your kids? That can be a massive issue, because everybody wants to go get their kid all at the same time, or kids. And so, having some type of a plan for that one. Workplace plans. They talk about a lot of different stuff. This is, I'm not going to go into detail on all of this. There's a lot here. What I wanted to get to, let's see, they're going over a lot of the details now. So escape routes, utility shutoffs, insurance and vital records, having that stuff prepared. So birth certificates, passports, driver's licenses, medications, lists of medications that you may or may not need, or you may need, I should say, or you may be on, or a relative might be on, that kind of stuff. Hearing impaired, mobility impaired, non-English speaking, that's obviously around here too. We have a lot of varied languages around here. People who have don't have, or English is their second or third language. So people without vehicles, dietary needs, special dietary needs. There's a lot of things. Caring for animals. This was a big one down in Katrina when they had the issue, the hurricane, or rather down in Louisiana with Katrina. People were just leaving their pets behind because they couldn't bring them with them to the locations, these locations that they were going to shelter in. So that's another one. What would you do with your pets? Having some kind of thing like that, safety skills. All right, let me get down to the actual. There we go. Assemble a disaster supply kit. There we go. This is what we want to do. All right, so you have to identify first of all what you want to. While I do this, so you have to identify first what disaster or disasters you want to have stuff prepared for. What are the things that you think are most likely to hit your area? So again, are you going to stay in, or are you going to leave your home potentially? So those are the two kind of big ones that you would have to be ready for, and then assembling those kits through that. So having kits at home, or something at home, something at work, or something in your car, having those things ready. I'm going to get to the list. So water obviously is number one. Bottles of water, super easy, super cheap to get your hands on. Here, I'll flip back to this. There we go. Super easy and super cheap to get your hands on bottles of water, cases of water. It can be heavy, obviously, so you don't want to load down everybody's backpacks or whatever with a case of water. Probably not a good idea. They have those little water bottle filter systems. Those are really cool, actually. I think they're about $30 on Amazon for one of those setups. And it can filter all kinds of nasty stuff. So water's obviously an important one. Food, some type of food, non-perishable stuff is good. Crackers, even like the jars of baby food, or the pouches are actually probably better. If you want to get fancy, you can get like MREs and things like that. You can buy that stuff all on Amazon or multiple other places. But having some type of food, some sustenance, some Cliff Bars, granola bars, things like that. Those are all good things that'll sit shelf stable for a year or more or two, so that you can have them in a bag or in a place ready for that stuff. And then obviously you have to remember that you have to rotate some of this stuff out at some point too, because food can get kind of funky after a while, even stuff that's shelf stable. So being prepared to change that out every year or two or something, so you have some fresh stuff. All right, so here's a basic disaster supply kit. 3-day supply of non-perishable food, as we just said. Canned food is great, obviously, too. Anything canned works pretty good. Things with tomatoes, not so much. Cans don't hold up as long. But, tuna, Spam, not that that's really good for you. But, yeah, tuna, Spam, anything in cans, beans, corned beef, hash, that kind of stuff. Those are all good Good things to have, or whatever you guys like, quite honestly. Beefaroni, I mean, you can have anything really. Just remember you have to change some of this stuff out over time. 3-day supply of water, of course. A portable battery-powered radio or television. Probably more likely a radio. They sell these things all over the place, actually. Again, Amazon is a good one. I've seen them in places like Kohl's and Bed Bath & Beyond, things like that. Just a little radio that winds up. They usually have a flashlight on them, and it's got a radio in it. But the big one is that it's got the NOAA radio stations programmed into it, pre-programmed, so you can go right to those and listen to your live weather reports for any big weather events if the power goes out. You guys who have solar, by the way, you're lucky because you don't have to worry as much. Though you probably don't have battery backups, actually, so you're probably not as lucky as I'm thinking. But it is handy. Generators as well. Good thing to have a generator. That's not on this. I don't think that's on this list, but that's clearly a good one, I would think. Flashlights and extra batteries, of course, right? If the power goes out, you're going to need flashlights, or if it's nighttime and you have to leave, flashlights are handy. I love the headlamps, by the way. Those are awesome. Keeps your hands free. They're super bright, and they use like between 2 and 3 AAA batteries. Those are really good ones. And they're generally like about $15 to $20 a piece. You can get 3 packs of them. I've seen at Home Depot and stuff. Those are really good. I like the headlamps a lot. You can just throw it right on your head and go about your business. Do what you got to do. Sanitation and hygiene stuff. So it's gross, but you have to deal with it. You're going to have to go at some point. So having plastic bags to go in, a bucket maybe, but wipes, baby wipes, super handy. Not just for babies. Those are super handy especially if you have to be out for a while. Anybody who's ever been in the service, if you've been in, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Those baby wipes can be a godsend because you're out there and you can wipe yourself and clean yourself up and stuff. So those are handy. But yeah, having a bunch of those things on hand, you can buy those by the case too. Big box of them for like $15, I think. They're not very expensive. Where are we? Oh, did I skipped over first aid kits. So this is a big one. Depending on your level of first aid knowledge, a basic first aid kit up to something advanced. Emergency services in an event would be stretched. Let's just say they'll be stretched thin, so they'll be trying to do their best to get to everybody. However, you may have to buy yourself some time if you did have some type of issue. I'm not saying go out and try to do surgery on yourself or anything like that, or on your relative or loved one, but having a basic first aid kit and a manual. They say a manual, but you should probably know how to use this stuff before the thing happens. It's a good idea. Read up on it anyways. You don't want to be reading it while your significant other or relative or something is sitting in front of you with this issue. It's not the best time to whip the book out and try to figure out what to do. But yeah, having a basic first aid kit with some different stuff. There's a number of videos on YouTube you can go through with all different kinds of stuff. Again, from basic all the way up to like, sutures and whatever. I mean, you can really do quite a bit. And all of this stuff for the most part is available on places like Amazon. I keep saying that, but they do have a good, you can get anything there, to be honest. There's lots of stuff, even sutures. I've seen them. Let's see. Talk about sanitation, matches in waterproof containers, right? So matches, of course, lighters. Rule of threes, I think, with a lot of this stuff. If you have one, you have none. If you have two, you have one. If you have three, you're doing a little better. You have two there. So having a few different ways to start a fire: lighters, matches. A Zippo, one of those flints that you can get that you can scrape and it causes sparks if you really got into it and had some problems with everything else. But just having a few different ways to do some of these things. Lighters can get wet. Matches can get wet unless you have the waterproof ones. Tinder can be soaking wet, so you may have to really, get this stuff blazing hot before it'll actually burn. Lots of different things. Knowing how to make a fire, if you had to be out and, God forbid you're like stuck out in the woods or something, it might be slightly more extreme, but could happen if you were out hiking. You could trip, break a knee or leg or something like that and be immobilized, and now you're stuck out. And so lots of different things can happen. Anyways, I won't go into all the different things. A whistle is a good one, just so you can make some noise. Yelling can be good, but a whistle can be heard for a lot further away than just a yell, just because of the pitch of it. You can hear that for quite a ways. Kitchen extra clothing. So there's a big one. If you're going to do a bag, like to leave, an extra supply of all your undergarments, just one set. I mean, you can do more if you want to, but you'll have limited space in a backpack. So an extra set of undergarments, a good pair of, or just a reasonable pair of sneakers so that you can walk, something you can walk in that'll be comfortable. A pair of jeans if you're somebody. So here's a good one. If you're a good example, if you go to work and you wear a suit all day, you wouldn't have to want to be running through the woods or walking along a highway in dress shoes and suit pants and a suit coat. You might want to keep in your car a pair of jeans and a button-down shirt or a t-shirt or something to that effect, depending on seasons, of course. A blanket in your car is a great one. That's a good one to have, and just a little kit for a breakdown kit. I have one of those in my car and my wife's car, a little breakdown kit in case you ever broke down. There's some way to make heat. Anyways, we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, so having some clothes available, especially undergarments, so you can at least change your underwear and stuff. It's always good. Good morale boost too there. So kitchen accessories and cooking utensils, including a can opener. So can opener, of course, and a fork and spoon and a knife. Those are good. You don't need to drag your blender or your coffee maker. You're probably not going to be a place to plug it in. Don't try to drag that stuff. I don't think that's what they're getting at. But having some of those things available to you. They sell those little camping kits. If you're a camper, you know what I'm talking about. They have those little kits for eating out and stuff. The little canteen type setups, things to cook food in and stuff over a fire. Those are pretty cool. If you really want to get into it. Photocopies of credit and identification cards. So you're probably going to have your identification cards with you, but should something happen and you were separated from those things, having a copy of them in a separate location, whether you left it at home or you have it in another pocket or in your bag or some type of thing, so that you have that stuff backed up. That's really good, especially if you travel and you have a passport. I put in my bag when we traveled to Europe, I put a copy of my passport in every single one of my luggage cases and my carry-on bag, and I had my passport itself on me. So that's a good one. But having multiple copies or a couple copies rather, of that stuff is definitely good. Cash and coins. Yeah, having some money. Credit cards might not work just because the power's out, so you might not be able to use a credit card. So having some cash on hand, or some type of hard currency is always good. Cash is king. Cash will always work. So for the most part, so having some of that on hand, keep $100 or something in a sock or whatever, just an emergency thing. So keep a little bit of extra cash if you can, whatever you can manage, obviously. Special needs items. So there's what we talked about earlier: prescription meds, eyeglasses, contact lenses, contact solution, and hearing aid batteries. So having all that stuff with you. If you have these issues, you know exactly what you use, and you'll know exactly what you need. It can be difficult to get some of these things. Sometimes if you, I don't know how well this would work, but I'm wondering if you could ask like your doctor, say, hey, I'm putting together a little disaster kit. Can I get an extra, 10 of my prescription med maybe, so that I can add that to my kit so I'm covered for a few days or something like that. You could probably ask your doctor. I'm sure they'd be willing to at least hear you out and maybe supply some extra stuff for you if they you told them what it was for. So that's possibly a route. I'm not saying that would work necessarily because I don't know for sure, but I would ask totally. If I was on any medications, I would definitely ask for that. Items for infants, so diapers, formula, bottles, pacifiers if you have any kids. We have a 1-year-old at my house, so that'd be on my list. All that stuff. You know what you need if you have a diaper bag. Whatever's in the diaper bag, pretty much. Once it's stocked and ready to go. Not the empty diaper bag that Dad got to and forgot to put all the stuff back in. That's don't use that diaper bag, but the one that has everything in it. So that's a good one. Let's see what else. And then it says other items to meet your unique family needs. So how about entertainment stuff to keep you guys busy? You can't just eat away your time or sit there and be bored. Decks of cards, things to draw on, coloring books. Depending on the age of the kids, they'll know what they want and what they'd want to bring with them. A special doll or a special blanket or that kind of stuff. Things that'll make you comfortable. You're as an adult, what would make you happy? Obviously, having your devices is a big one. So you might want to make sure you have a battery backup for your cell phone. I don't have my one here with me, but having one of those, they're about $20 usually, depending on the quality of the ones you get. You can charge it up, and they'll usually give you a couple charges of your device. So having something like that's obviously good. They sell those really cool solar-powered ones. They're a little solar panel thing. You open up and you plug it into your phone, and it'll charge your phone. Those are cool, but having some way to charge your devices, because if your kids want to use, say they want to bring iPads or whatever, smartphones or something like that along with them. That's their comfort device. Then having that and a way to power it is obviously a good one. That could be handy. And then it gets into cold climate stuff. So if you live in a cold climate, you must think about warmth, obviously. So it gets wicked cold. Let's see. It's possible that you won't have heat. Is that something that could happen? So think about your clothing, bedding supplies. They say be sure to include a complete change of clothing and shoes per person, including a jacket or coat, long pants, long sleeve shirts, sturdy shoes, hats, mittens, and scarves, and sleeping bags or warm blankets. So obvious stuff, right? If it's cold and you live in a cold climate, plan for cold things to happen to us because it's going to happen most likely. We're going to have a snowstorm or some crazy thing like that. So, how would you warm your house in the event of power outage and your furnace isn't working or something like that? Do you have any backup plans? There's a lot of cool stuff on YouTube. I won't go into detail on that here, but you can do some searching yourself. But there's a lot of interesting, safe ways to warm your house a little bit so that you can stay in your home, or knowing where your shelter is, where the shelter is that you'd have to go to stay warm. So lots of interesting things you can do there. But planning for that and having the clothing. My motto is be prepared to get wet, because if you get wet, you're gonna have to change your clothes, so you're gonna need a backup pair of clothes. So that's more or less how I look at it. And then maintaining your kit. So that's kind of what I was talking about, rotating out food and stuff. So keep canned foods in a dry place where the temperature is cool. Store boxed food in tightly closed plastic or metal containers to protect them from pests and to extend its shelf life. Surprisingly enough, lots of food that you buy from the market, even though they have dates on them, the expiration dates, a lot of that stuff will last well past those dates. You'd be surprised at how long. I did a test with peanut butter. I was curious, and I had some peanut butter that was, I just looked at it yesterday too, and I forgot to look at the date again. I think it was 8 years old, and it was still edible. I'm not even kidding. It was just straight up Market Basket brand peanut butter, and it lasted 8 years, and it's still edible. So I'm not saying to leave it in the cupboard for 8 years and eat it then, but stuff can last quite a while. So don't be afraid to get some canned stuff that can last a good long time. But rotating is obviously good. So you want to have fresh food because you want it to taste good. If you're in a disaster, the last thing you want to find out is your food is either bad or just tastes bad because it's old. So even though you're hungry, you'll still eat it. But it's nice to at least make sure that it tastes good still. So a couple caveats obviously with the canned goods and obviously the food. Be careful if the can is swollen. Do not eat that. Oh my God, you can get so sick. Botulism is what you get from canned foods that have gone bad. Yeah, you can get some absolutely serious, if not life-threatening sicknesses from eating bad canned food, bad food in general. So be careful. Obviously, know some of the signs of what is bad and what isn't bad. Always taste test just a little tiny bit. Put a little bit on your tongue if you're ever wondering, and see what it does. Give it a couple minutes and see what happens. It's one of the ways to do that. So, but yeah, that's always good. Use foods before they go bad. Again, I'm with the board on the date thing. I'm not so much a fan of the expiration dates, but I think stuff lasts a lot longer than they like to let you think. Let's see. Place new items in the back. So this is talking about rotate foods, placing new items in the back and pushing the old stuff to the front. That's rotating food. We used to do that in the restaurant. It's just proper rotation of food. You do that at home. You would buy a new box of something, you put it behind the old box, and then you finish off the old box and you use the new box once you finish the old box. So let's see. Clear stored food and water supplies every 6 months. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Reuse that stuff if you can put it on a rotation and get it used every 6 months. Rethink your needs every year and update your kit as your family needs change, because babies grow up. Maybe you don't need that prescription medication anymore, so that's not on your plan, or you do need a new prescription medication for something else, or you have some other ailment that needs to be tended to. So that's a good idea. Definitely reevaluate every year. New things seem to come up all the time too, as far as what could happen to us. So and then keep items in an airtight plastic bag, or put your entire disaster kit in 1 or 2 easy to carry containers. I think by containers they mean backpacks, such as unused trash can, camping backpack. There you go, or duffel bag. Okay, so yeah, so having those kits ready to go. People call them go bags. There's bunches of different ways you can store it. I would suggest personally having one for each relative. That way you don't have 2 wicked overladen bags, and then you can carry more stuff too. If each person has their own bag, they can all carry their own food, their own water, their own additional supplies, and then you can have the other stuff. So it kind of lightens the load of mom and dad having to carry all this stuff, provided obviously that the kid's big enough to carry their own bag. If they're 2 or 3 or 4, it's probably not a good idea, but even still, they can carry a little bag. You'd be surprised. Your dog, don't forget your dog, having some pet food, things like that. That's a good one. And yeah, just basically having a disaster kit. As I said in the beginning of this thing, you never know what's going to happen. We have all kinds of stuff happening around here. Again, power outages, flooding, explosions from gas lines. Good. I really hope that one doesn't happen again. Let's cross our fingers on that one. But there's lots and lots of things that could happen. I'm not trying to scare people. Please don't take it that way. But that said, it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of stuff ready for something. You never know. If you ever have to get displaced or whatever. So, and we have the normal disasters, the snowstorms, and there's no milk, bread, and eggs left at the supermarket. So, all of that fun stuff that happens, that's more fun anyways, than the bigger disasters. So, but having something for those things so you can go a few days without having to go to the supermarket is obviously a good thing. Supplemental heat, supplemental clothing, just because it's going to get cold. Supplemental power, if you have solar or, well, again, you probably don't have battery backups, but generators, testing your generator once a year. I just bought one, actually. My wife and I, we finally got a generator for the first time, and it's one that's good size. I can actually do the whole house. It's nice. It's a portable thing. So anyways, testing that every 6 months to make sure that it turns over. Little top tip, don't leave it full of gas. Don't leave any of your gas appliances. Your gas lawnmowers, snowblowers, things like that. Never leave gas in them for too long because the gas gets gummy and will congeal the carburetors and will cause them to not want to start. If you have a chainsaw, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're super finicky. Yeah, try not to leave gas in them. I'll tend to actually run, before the end of a season, I'll actually run my snowblower out of gas, lawnmower out of gas, same thing. All of the devices that I use that use gas, I'll run them out till they're empty. And that's how I'll store them, so that they don't have gas sitting in the systems, gumming up. And because with cold temperatures, that stuff gets gross, and it literally turns into like a glue in there and can cause all kinds of other problems. And then when you really need it, it doesn't work. So making sure not to leave gas in that stuff is always a good idea. But again, testing things that are important, generators and all that stuff. How do you turn on your backup power if you have that set up to your house, or does it turn on its own if you have one of those nice automated systems, things like that. And the other stuff we talked about with the gas and the water and all that too. Your main electricity, if you're not technically adept, at least know where that main is so you could shut that off if something was to happen and you had to, or who you could call. I could walk you through it and help you. Or at least come over and show you where some of these things are. And again, YouTube and the internet is great for that stuff. You can learn all kinds of really cool stuff. So anyways, that's pretty much all I have for today. Kind of interesting stuff. Scary in some ways. If you have kids, it makes it that much more interesting to think about, and that much more unnerving to have to think about as well, because it can obviously be troubling to think about this stuff. But that said, if you've thought about it ahead of time, it'll make you more prepared in the future, so you won't have to be as nervous or scared. And that feeling of being unprepared, you all know exactly how that feels. I know I do too. It's the worst, and you don't want to have to do that. So if you can avoid being unprepared, definitely a good way to go. Just a little bit of pre-planning and having some of these things ready, and you'll be good. So that's all I got. So let's just go back to quickly show you the weather one more time if you're just tuning in. Is the weather for Tyngsborough for this week. It's going to be pretty nice, just cold, chance of snow on Sunday, and there's a storm maybe Monday, Tuesday. I have no idea how big. National Weather Service has not said yet what is going on with it as far as like totals or anything like that. We're still a bit out from that. But yeah, be ready for that, and just be ready for the cold, because it's going to get back down into the 30s and the 20s, so which is just crazy. I still can't believe how cold it's gotten from. We were -1 at my house a week ago, not even. And then now, yesterday we were in almost 60 degrees. Like, it's just insane how the weather has been swinging lately. So be prepared for illness and stuff like that too. That's actually a good one. Having plenty of vitamins and all that fun stuff, orange juice and all the like, to try to stave off the chances of getting sick. That'll definitely help you in the future. That's for sure. It works for us. Or at least I think it does. It helps. It's always interesting to have to deal with that. So anyways, yeah, be ready for some cold and some more snow potentially this weekend, or rather Monday, Tuesday, and a flurry on Sunday. So otherwise, not too bad. So that does it for me, folks. I hope you guys had fun listening to this. I know a bunch of people were tuning in. A couple people chiming in on Facebook. Interesting stuff. I'll post the link to the FEMA doc so you can check it out for yourself if you wanted to follow up with this and do a little bit of preparedness for your own self or your family, so that in the event that something happens, you're ready for it. Yeah, so that's about it. I am. One more reminder. Don't forget, Tuesday at Old Town Hall, 7 p.m. is the special town meeting for the one issue for getting some additional funding to help complete the First Parish Meeting House project. So that's happening Tuesday, and we'll be broadcasting it, of course. So that's all I got, folks. I hope you guys have a great weekend and great rest of the week. Or rather, great weekend. It's Friday. Enjoy, and I'll see you guys all next time. Take it easy. Bye.